Welcome to yet another edition of the Castle of Horror coverage of Fantastic Fest. The fest in Austin has come to an end. Tony Salvaggio, who has been covering the fest for us, is on the line, and we are having a conversation to wrap up, first of all, the last few films that Tony saw, and second, just a general recap of what Fantastic Fest was like this year. And Tony, you wanted to mention that actually for a few more days, and we through to the end of the week, people can still catch stuff online too. Is that right?
Yeah, Fantastic Fest at home is still going on. I plan on catching some films.
That
I'm not sure if tickets. Although I don't know if tickets are still available. So maybe I don't want to do people a disservice.
mhm.
But if you have at our recommendation, got a ticket, then some of these films may appear, and you might want to check them out. But I think it is cool that for people at home who can't go, or just want to go, what's the whole deal with Fantastic Fest? I noticed how many repertory screenings there were. There was a bunch of Hollywood stuff up there as well, which was cool. But yeah, if you did get a ticket and are at home, there's still the fact that they extended that way, which is kind of a holdover from last year because COVID was still, had spiked again. And so Fantastic Fest as a whole this was the first kind of rebuilding year. But I hope that they continue to do the at-home programming. I think my only wish would be that it extended further, because I'm still catching up, so I haven't caught as many movies. I watched 30-something movies. I slept most of the day yesterday. Well, I slept
Sure.
longer than I normally would. I would have slept through my first Fantastic Fest movie, although I did wake up. Once you're in that mode, I woke up and went, "What's my first?" Oh yeah, it's over.
It's
I don't have to drive down to the drive house. I instinctively picked up my phone to check my tickets and went, "Oh, what are you doing?"
there must be a sort of a feeling of like a mild depression of just, gosh, I guess it's
Oh
over.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, I saw so many friends, met new friends, discussed things, talked about what other people were doing, their projects, talked about our podcast,
hmm
caught up with friends from all over the world, discussed film with directors.
Yeah.
I mean, the director of The Hidden was there. Got to say hey and say thanks for making awesome movies that I like. It's just, but in a way that's just, hey, let's talk about film. It wasn't. That's what's great. I've said it before, but the red carpet part of it kind of goes away at this festival in particular.
Mm.
We're just all hanging out between movies. Like, what'd you see? Oh, wasn't that great? Hey, what are you doing next? That kind of thing. And so yeah, I miss that a lot.
Yeah. Well, but you
Getting
go
coffee and
every
hanging
year,
out. I
so
mean, now the good thing is I don't have to be so sad because, hey, we're talking, and hey, there's an episode tomorrow night of our normal.
of
Like
right
we're
of
talking
Castle of
Scars of
Horror
Dracula.
podcast.
So that helps a
Well,
lot.
also everything to me, what's really interesting when you go to Fantastic Fest and you watch all these movies, the movies then sprinkle out. If you picture this giant, this jolly green giant, just sort of casting, seeds of films across the year, the
Yeah.
films pop back up,
Well, well,
for a
speak.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the whole thing, and I hope we cover a bunch of them. In
Mm.
fact, I think I sent you Vesper, which I raved about.
hmm
Is out on VOD. I think it's getting some theatrical release, and it's beautiful. Dark, but beautiful in its dystopia.
Mm.
So if you search it out right now, you can watch Vesper. Like, you can watch a film that we just talked about. Some of the other films, there's different release dates. In fact, a couple, have embargoes. But yeah, as we recommend things, and I try to keep track of those. I'll also probably copy it. There's a Facebook group called Fantastic Fest Fiends, started by a friend of mine who sadly passed away,
Mm.
and Holly Blaine, and they in fact because she was so integral to the fest and to the draft house, there's actually a plaque
Huh.
in the Theater 4 of the
Goodness.
draft house, South Lamar. Oddly, in a very maybe true to my Catholic or partially Catholic upbringing, I find myself touching the plaque as I go into the theater in her
Really?
memory. I don't know. It's just one of those things. But but that's so theater 4 is like because she was such a part, and that's that says a lot about the festival as well.
Sure.
Like that you would have something in somebody that touched so many people that they are memorialized in a theater. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's emotional and it is tragic, but also those seeds spread out, those ripples
Yeah.
happen. Not to get too maudlin on that side, but you're right. Like the fest spreads out, and people's projects come through, and then they get distribution, and some of them already have distribution, but you get to see them on the big screen. We
Yes.
were just talking, like, I saw Werewolf by Night on the big screen.
Right, and it's gonna
That's
be on Disney Plus in, like, a week.
Yeah,
Hellraiser will
stuff that's on
be
Shudder.
well,
Yeah.
Hellraiser is gonna be on Hulu in, like, a
Yeah.
week or whatever it is. So some of this stuff is very, very close by. Some of it, you will wake up one day 4 months from now, and you'll find something coming out or coming to Shudder or
Right.
whatever, so
Or we just covered Saloon, but I've been waiting a year to be able to tell people, like, "Hey, go out and
Right.
watch this really cool thing that I saw." And there's still some that haven't come out.
Do you think,
Um,
Tony, with however many of these films are not in the English language, so the conventional wisdom 15 years ago was that it's super hard to get a good distribution on a foreign film, much less a foreign film in a different language besides English, in English language theaters anyway.
mhm.
And I believe that the landscape has changed so much with streaming. I'm actually just wondering if you agree with my theory. I believe that the landscape has changed so much with streaming that people who 15 years ago would not watch a Korean movie or would not watch a French movie will now watch a Korean movie and a French movie.
It's possible. I still encounter a lot of people who don't really wanna watch subtitled film.
Yeah,
That's a shame. I mean, look, it's up to you. I'm not gonna tell you what to do with your time.
sure.
I think, in my opinion, they're potentially missing a lot of really great cinema.
Yeah,
But if they don't think that, I'm not gonna say. But
right,
I do think that there's a lot of voices out there, and I think, again, by closing yourself off, if you're a creator, I think that's not so great,
right,
right? As a viewer, choose your own adventure. I'm not here to be the arbiter of your taste, right?
right.
Or where you're comfortable. I think for myself, I've talked about it before, but part of the creative battery recharge that is Fantastic Fest or any film festival or any kind of, marathon kind of thing is seeing a lot of cinema. And I'm not saying you have to open up a fire hose and try to drink from it like I do on this
Yeah.
festival. Like that's, there's a few hundred of us evidently. Right. But that's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But I think if you're not seeking out these voices, I think it does things to your creative brain by seeing things from all over and kind of getting a different perspective, even if it's on the same thing, even if it's an over the top action film
Yeah.
that hews closer to how our over the top action films are, maybe from Hollywood, but you're going to get something different. There's going to be a little twist or a little bit of the way things work in a different country, in a different environment, with different legends, with different mythology, different political environment. All of those things add to here's something different,
Yeah.
even when they seem similar, right? So yeah. Although now I'm thinking about there was a movie that I need to look up. I need to look up the name of it. I'm sorry, it's still early morning for me, actually. But there was a film by the director who did G Robot, about it was basically like a carnival circus X-Men style
Huh.
thing, and I need to look it up again. I think I talked about it last year, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that has distribution, and I would totally want people to see that. It was just over the top, but it was so high budget. Like I said, I mean, World War II X-Men freaks, circus freaks, I think a lot of people would like to see that, but I don't know if it made it over here.
So the films that you touched on since we last talked, it looks like you have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8,
Yeah, I
9,
have
10,
a
11,
bunch.
like
I
11
yeah, I
that
watched 3, I watched 3. I actually skipped a film slot to go hang out with friends because it was gonna be, again, this is part of my, "Hey, let's hang out and talk about movies more."
sure.
So I did skip one, which I'm gonna see on either on demand or on, catching the press. So I'll probably have more movies to recommend next week
Goodness
as
gracious.
during our recommendations section. So I'll probably watch about my plan is to watch 4 or 5 more movies at least
Hmm.
over the next few days.
Goodness
in
great. Well,
addition to catching up with everything with Rain. But yeah, so
and the fact that we've got to cover a movie tomorrow night for the
yeah,
show. Um,
exactly.
so
I
you got to
mean,
watch some old school Hammer for
I
the day.
don't know. I doubt this is normal for most people, but this is me, you know.
Well, it'll also you're in the middle of a fever and it will break. I mean, in other words, this will
Yeah.
eventually it'll settle down to where you'll be back to like a couple of movies a week, plus
Yeah.
the ones that the ones that you fall asleep to. I know that you play movies at night when you so
Yeah, I have a whole list of those. And then also, I do have to we're going back in the studio for Deserts of Mars in November, end of November. So I do
Mhm,
actually have to do pre-pro on a whole album's worth of songs
mm,
and finish all the lyrics and, learn them. So yeah, at some point that amount of cinema will be untenable. But for now, I
yeah,
have what I have. Yeah, so the three I saw since we last talked were Mr. Organ, which was again, there's some tangential genre stuff, or just movies that we do the same thing in Castle of Horror podcast, right?
yeah,
And awesomeness covers all the things that aren't horror or maybe sci-fi, right? So Mr. Organ fits into the Fantastic Fest version of and awesomeness.
mhm,
It's a documentary about a filmmaker, a journalist from New Zealand, David Ferrier, actually, he was really cool. We actually ended up talking about metal. He's a really, really cool guy. But he started covering where this company was putting car boots, clamping car clamps on cars outside of this antique shop's parking lot and charging insane fees, just like $700 for you were there like 30 minutes, like you just happened to park your car there. And as it unrolls, you find this guy, Michael Organ, who's
mhm,
also changed his name, like sometimes Orgain, who's claimed at one point he was a prince, that he's all these things. And this person is just, you see how he gets into people's lives and gets his hooks in and just destroys people's psyches.
mhm,
There's no other way to really say it. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's to the point where Ferrier is like kind of a little bit fearful, and he's kind of just trying to figure out what's up with this guy. He's like the real life version of the Colin Robinson character from What We Do in the Shadows,
mm,
but worse in some ways. Like it's bizarre and kind of scary. Scary to everyone involved. And it was just fascinating to see a profile of a person who's just rips through people to the point where they're afraid to say anything on the phone. They're afraid to talk to the director and his team. I mean, it starts as this, hey, it's quirky. Who's this guy who's clamping cars,
huh,
and gets so much darker. And it's an interesting thing if you've ever been had people who are kind of toxic. This
yeah.
takes it to a next level.
Why is he
And
called Mr. Organ? Like,
his
what's
name
the
his name is Michael Organ.
Michael Organ? Okay, all
Yeah,
right, very good.
but the name of the documentary is Mr. Organ, because he goes, but he's
It's a very
affable.
scary name.
Yeah, he's very affable. And again, I don't like to give away too much, but there's turns in this movie where you're just going,
Huh.
wow, and it really affected. Like, I think it has a November release in New Zealand.
Mhm.
And there were a lot of questions in the Q&As about, well, are you fearful for your life? Do you think he's gonna, do you think the movie's gonna be released even? You know, because of how litigious this person is, it was really affecting.
Wow.
Just, you feel bad, and then you also kind of angry that this guy can do this, and then that what creates a person who does these things, that manipulates people in these ways. What trauma have they been in when they were younger that caused, what's that twist? And there's not a good answer for that. But that was really
Yeah.
that this documentary really puts you through something. Yeah, I was just wow. I also, on the flip side of that, I saw Kids versus Aliens,
Okay.
which is Jason Eisner. If you liked, Hobo with a Shotgun
Mhm.
and some of his other films, that it started as a high concept trailer, that Hobo with a Shotgun.
Yes.
And there was even they even did a video game that was released, and it was actually in the draft house because my former drummer, Billy Garrettson, did a lot of work on the video game. I think he did the soundtrack and he did a lot of the art.
Mhm.
But when Hobo with the Shotgun came out at Fantastic Fest, they actually set up an arcade game with it. But it's so Kids versus Aliens is exactly what it says.
Uh-huh.
And I hope that no one takes this the wrong way when I say this, but it's like Goonies, Monster Squad, all of that, with the kind of it has the indie flavor of crazy monsters, and it can get more gory than any of those
Uh-huh.
films, but it's so of exactly what it is that at times it feels like, and again, I mean this in the best possible way.
Yeah.
It's almost as if you took a script that a 12-year-old had written as far
Uh-huh.
as what would be their, Goonies Monster Squad like movie.
Uh-huh.
And then took that script, doctored up a little bit and went, you know what? Well, now, 12-year-old me, we're gonna just film this because I have a budget and I can do these things.
Mhm.
And it encapsulates all of that. Not everybody's going to be on in for the ride on that because, it's exactly that. But if you're looking for just like, whoa, this is all happening, it doesn't do much that you haven't kind of seen in that. But the way it does it, and I'm kind of along for the ride when somebody's like, I'm just gonna do this. Here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
The aliens come in and then the kids fight them. And there's, of course, the underdog part of
Sure.
Goonies, Stranger Things, etc. Like, not to conjure too much of that, but I think it's fair to say that the filmmakers also are influenced by at the very least like Goonies and Monster Squad, right? And
Sometimes
other
influences are influences, and sometimes influences are permission to do the thing you wanted to do. Like,
sure.
you might have been waiting in the wings with your I'm just gonna make this up, with your romantic vampire movie, and then finally another romantic vampire movie comes out and you go, "Ah, thank God, now somebody will pay attention to me." And then you do yours. So it can be both. You can have influences and you can kind of just have gate openers in a sense.
Yeah, and I think, Eisner and his crew are really having fun with it. It's lower budget than, but everything like the everything's up on the screen, right? All the gore, the kids are into wrestling, so that comes into it. And it's a little bit of coming of age. Like there's some really interesting things with the one of our main protagonists, an older sister, Samantha, who is into nerdy stuff, so we get kind of our nerd stuff channeled through her, but also what it's like to also be a teenage girl who would fall for a jerky guy who's kind of football captainy kind of person.
Mhm.
That kind of stuff, and that this turns, and then aliens come in and are invade a party and rip through things. I mean, it's exactly that. The surprises all come from, holy crap, we're watching this happen, and it was a nice kind of palate cleanser to come off of a really heavy documentary full of
Right.
real life terrible people.
Yeah.
And watching aliens rip through, they kind of rip through good and evil in this because that's their job, evidently. But there's a lot of little nice homages to things you like, and if you liked Hobo with the Shotgun and you like low budget or lower budget horror, I don't mean that to be pejorative.
No.
It's just how it is. But the budget looks great on screen, right? Like there's crazy monsters and cool costumes and practical effects and melty things and tons of goo and everything that, again, a teenager would want in a movie and then able to film it. Like if you just plugged in a cable and said, what would you like? And then this happens. And then this
Yeah.
happens, right? Like it feels like that. And then this, which
I
was
keep
cool.
thinking about that actually, sometimes when you're writing something, when you get stuck, I've heard people say, just back away from the whiteboard and go, what if I just did the most amazing, like, in other words, what if you threw your outline out and you just had the characters do something in character, but completely unexpected? Like, where do you
Right.
get? It can be a way of renewing it. All right. But, okay. So from of Sad, no, that's Kids and Aliens. But the next one that you wanted to talk about was Triangle of
Yeah.
Sadness. So what is
That
that?
one is getting a Draft House recommends.
Okay.
It's a again, I think it goes into the and awesomeness. It was a film that I'd heard good buzz about. It was the closing night film, and I always try to see the closing night film because I trust the programmers and the everyone involved to pick the final night film that makes sense and that is really good. So I went into it totally, just blind. And what we have is, it starts with like, male models, auditioning models and rich people going to a yacht on a rich people's cruise, and how it doesn't start very farcical, but it starts out at class, what class is, what classism is, what rich good looking people, how they affect things, and how this turns out on this cruise, because it's really just, the mandate on this cruise is whatever rich people want, go get them. There's one of those team meetings, and I don't know if anybody's had to have team meetings about certain things, but you watch it, and if you're in the tax bracket I'm in, I'm like, or I've gone through it before. Anybody who's ever had to eat government cheese
Hmm.
or mixed powdered milk, because that's what you have.
Yeah.
I found these people, like, I'm like, oh man. Ah. Luckily, I'm not that. I am very blessed and very lucky. I am where
Sure.
I am right now. But there's a next level to that,
Yeah.
and it turns into, and I don't want to give away any sequences, but it's what it does with over the top humor. There's and what it eventually turns into about the nature of class
Hmm.
and stature is pretty fascinating. People have posted it also. People have posted it, but there's also a gag. This is the kind of Fantastic Fest thing you get, right? So you see the poster and somebody vomiting, and
Uh-huh.
then when you get into the theater, and at your seat is a vomit bag, like a air sick bag, that just in case. Or it tells you to relax your triangle of silence, which is the triangle between your
Uh-huh.
eyebrows, evidently, because there's a line about that,
I
and
never
then
knew that.
vomit
That's
into this
interesting.
bag. Well, I think it's a thing that's said because it comes up in audition for the male models.
Okay.
Like, can you relax your triangle of
That's very
sadness?
funny. Okay.
Like, if that whole thing is its own, it starts with this. What is it like to audition as a male model? That's just even the start of the film. I don't want to spoil anything really, but there's sequences in there that had me just rolling for all. Probably I shouldn't be you shouldn't laugh as much, but man, it was great. But it really turns into a lot of kind of interplay with when things are stripped away, what is class, what is what matters. And it was great. It's not technically big horror sci-fi or whatever, but it has a lot to say.
Right.
Woody Harrelson is great as the ship's captain.
Hmm.
And they're really pushing it because I think they want it to get, it's a Draft House recommends. So there are even cameras there, people filming, reactions and
I
such.
can't believe Woody Harrelson is in this. I mean,
Well,
that's
I mean, he
amazing.
does a lot of stuff. It's,
Yeah, but isn't it
it's a
a
big budget,
but isn't it a Swedish movie?
yeah, yeah.
That's
I mean, it
that's
won
amazing.
it won the Palme d'Or.
Yeah,
At,
well, that's true. That's a really good point.
I
Yes,
mean,
exciting.
it's legit awesome film, but wow,
That's really
it's
cool.
something else. And the one of the actors was there, and she was quite the hoot as far as she's great in the movie. Again, I straddle this line where I want to talk about get more in depth. Perhaps if it was a print article, I would get more in depth, but I also don't want to spoil anything
Right,
because I think part of the discovery is part of cinema for me is the discovery.
right.
But I can say if you're looking for a film that has a decent amount of farce, that's also about class struggle,
Yeah.
that has a lot to say, this is the one, and some comeuppance here and there, which was nice.
Hmm.
So it was a great closing night film. I left with a smile on my face and with a lot of cinema to think about.
Hmm.
And I think that's about all you can ask for, right?
Yeah.
Like, or even if it's not a smile, like it could be a horror movie and you're not smiling, but you're still thinking.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other part of Fantastic Fest, that even if I've seen 30 something movies, there's a few that I'm still kind of chewing on in my brain.
Yeah.
Some of them might be about things chewing on people's brains sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's still a lot. I'm still mulling over a lot. Some of those speaking of which, I wasn't able to cover
Yeah, there are some
some
others
other
along
ones.
the week. that you wanted to bring up that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. So yeah, sure, feel free.
Yeah, one was Huesera, which is there is a trend, and we talked about, actually, a bunch of friends of
Also a
mine and I
Mexican
were,
film, also
yeah,
Spanish language. Yep.
exactly. This is a great year for Spanish language film. I wish, it was really great. A lot of horror here, and I'm guessing that's because it's the trend throughout, but a lot horror has been a lot about trauma in the past, but I think the past few years, past maybe decade, but at least the past 5 years or so, a lot of horror has dealt with either trauma of the individual or generational trauma.
Mhm.
And Sarah deals with the trauma of, someone who's about to have her first child,
Mhm.
and things start to haunt her, and she
Huh.
starts to question, what is this the thing she wants to do, or what am I ready for this? And I think that's also, so there's trauma in that, as well as, I think, there's a fair amount of mothers who might also find the horror in that, like, this is something I really want, but why am I second guessing these things,
Mm.
and add creepy bone crunching sounds and
Yeah.
creepy things, because it also deals with her ties to her, when she was growing up. She was in a punk she was had a punk phase, and she has a best friend where she kind of is now lit going towards the middle class ideal of, a kid and a husband, and he's a
Mhm.
loving husband. But also, what she has to, for a while, she has to give up. She's a carpenter, or not just that, she builds all kinds of things, but those chemicals are not great for a child, so she's got to think, well, what do I have to give up when other people aren't giving that up?
Hmm.
But it's effectively creepy. It's the sound design too, of all the crunchy bones and everything was just,
Goodness.
whoo. It was something else. Lots of shadowy, kind of like, lots of darkness, lots of things crawling around, and what's real, and it plays a lot with what's real and what's not. And I thought that was really great. On a And kind of on a similar note,
Mm.
Disappear Completely also had a trauma part where it's a journalist, a photographer, who takes gruesome photos for the newspapers in Mexico that just publish gruesome photos.
Mhm.
There's
Yep.
a whole, culture of just accident photos, and in fact, they gave some of them out at the end of the movie.
Wow.
Um,
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, but there's a whole thing, and in fact, the filmmakers talked about it as, they had to do basically versions of them for the film,
Uh-huh.
but they went to the photo morgue, no pun intended, of the newspapers,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, there was only X amount we could even put in a movie, in an R-rated movie.
Goodness gracious.
And the
Yeah.
effect of that, and this is a flip side. You have this person who witnesses things, and things start to unravel, and he is cursed with slowly removing his senses.
Wow.
So if you can imagine, kind of thinner, but
Yes.
with
With senses. Yeah.
Mexican witchery,
Yeah.
and what it's like. And it's funny too, because a lot of the filmmakers throughout the whole thing, because there was a lot of a lot of films about witchcraft, and everybody kind of agreed that even if you don't believe in witchcraft, that it's so ingrained that you still kind of respect it,
Yeah.
or go, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to do the wrong thing just in case. And and they talked about, everybody knows somebody else who's like, oh, well, let me, if you need the number to the witch that I know,
Sure.
like, legit. And there's the whole witches market there in Mexico. And regardless of what you think about it, there's something there, and there's
Yeah.
something to be talked about and told, and added to the film. But it also, that's something we don't really have here. And again, this is a, wow, what's that like to have something that is so deeply rooted? We have different things, but in America, it's so disparate and regional that there's stuff all over, but it's not like that. So again, it's really cool. And we have a flip side of the previous movie, where our photographer Santiago is having second thoughts about his significant other having a baby, and so he's dealing with that, and what that's like once he, who he can depend on, if he's hesitant, like, and this unborn child is dependent on him, who's he dependent on when he's cursed and his senses are slowly being removed?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it plays a lot with that, and it's creepy. It has, all the things like, how do I find out who did this? What's this? And also, part of that curse is, do you reap what you sow? Like, is it okay to be a photographer who needs to break into places and
Exploit
take
people.
pictures, exploit people,
Yeah.
put somebody's trauma, some family's trauma in a paper, where potentially somebody walking by a newsstand could see their relative obliterated or like, before they even, is that person even somebody, like, would this be a closed casket funeral, right?
Yeah.
And how exploitative that is. It doesn't go as much into that newspaper side as you could do a totally different movie about that, but that is part of it. Like, how can you constantly, if that's your life, I need to get the most gruesome photos, or I need to get the scoop on this horrible things. Where do those ripples go as well,
Yeah.
right? And
So what
beautifully shot as well.
I wanted to make sure and stay cognizant of time.
Sure.
You mentioned something else, and I'm real curious about this. Now, this is a Korean movie, and it's called Decision to Leave. What is that?
Oh, yeah, Decision to Leave was really great. Park Chan-wook, who have you seen JSA,
No, I don't
Jason?
think I have. No,
Oh
the
man.
show, the series, right? No,
No,
I
no,
haven't seen
no.
it.
It's a movie.
Okay.
Beautiful movie. And it was actually the first big Korean film that I think I saw. That
Oh,
put me
JSA
on to.
meaning Joint Security Area.
Yes,
You're
correct.
talking about the well, I mean, Agfa played that at Fantastic
Oh
Fest
yeah,
as
and
well.
that was great because I did not. I just wanted to see. It had been years since I'd seen JSA, right?
Yeah,
And Park Chan Wook was there to do Decision to Leave, and so he gave an intro to
that's cool.
JSA,
Yeah, this is a
which was
2000
just
movie,
like,
and
what?
yeah.
So I saw it. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I saw JSA because there was a side service called Nicheflix,
Uh huh.
and it did mostly the same model of disc-based Netflix,
Uh huh.
but for region two, everything not region one.
Right.
So you stuff from the UK, stuff from all over Asia, some Indian cinema, and the whole point was, you're all over Europe. Was if you had a region free player, it was expensive. I luckily got gifted a subscription for a couple of years. My only regret is that it was really hard. Like, without the backing of multi-million dollars of Netflix, right, and how that grew, it's hard to do that if you're just one person or a team of several people shipping things, right? So it's kind of slow, but it was amazing. And I remember hearing about JSA and then renting it and going, whoa, what is going on in Korea?
Hmm.
And then eventually, followed by Old Boy and just the Vengeance series,
Yeah.
which are, that's all Park Chan Wook. In fact, he joked that people look at JSA and go, well, it's not Park Chan Wook enough. And he's like, it's kind of incredulous because he's like, I made this movie. What do you mean? Like, this is still me. But when you look at it, a political thriller
Yeah.
is not Old Boy, and it's not the Vengeance series, right?
Right.
It's not what people expect, and it's in some ways by the book, and in other ways, JSA is, it's still interesting because it deals with it. It's an interesting thriller because it asks the why and not the who, and that is cool. But not to get too sidetracked by JSA, but this is the latest. Decision to Leave is the latest
Park Chang-wook.
of his films, and wow, I can't wait for people to see it. It is tough. It's a detective who's covering murders, or there's a hiker is found, and he's trying to figure out, was it suicide or murder.
Hmm.
And as he goes along, he starts to investigate the man's wife, and that starts to disrupt his own relationships.
Right.
And it's definitely of that slow burn thriller.
The people likened it to Vertigo and Basic Instinct, which is a heck of a pair. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
I think that's fair. I mean, that came from the Draft House description of that, and
yeah.
I think that's fair. I think it's got there's a lot of influences there.
I watch a
Um,
lot of horror movies, but I love romantic thrillers. That
oh,
sounds
you're
on.
gonna
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who like, and I also, this is coming off of The Handmaiden,
Hmm.
which is a tough movie, but holy moly, is it beautiful. I recommend The Handmaiden big
Hmm.
time. But yeah, there's a lot of good mystery thriller stuff. If that's what you're looking for,
Hmm.
this has it in spades. I mean, it is, and it's, of course, he constantly has just beautiful. Oh, Thirst as well, he did. Which, if you're looking for beautifully filmed, thought-provoking vampires, which are good for this, for our podcast, there's Thirst.
Yeah.
That's also just really, really good. But yeah, I Decision to Leave is, and that title works on multiple levels. As you see it, you understand why that's the theme that propagates throughout the film, and it deals a lot with how close can you get to the subject, and how close do you need to be to the subject to solve these murders in the best, Cinemax way, in a way. But it's more highbrow than that. Right? But
Sure.
there's so much of our, sexy thriller legacy
Yes.
that deals with, oh, you're in too deep kind of thing,
Well,
and
that's
how do you
and that's a part of the
extricate.
genre. I mean, that's part
Right,
of
right.
that genre, and that's how it works. So you'd be remiss if there weren't temptations in the wrong direction and double meanings of conversations and smoke-filled rooms. I
Yeah.
yeah, can't wait. I
Yeah,
that sounds cool.
it is beautiful, gut wrenching, interesting. I mean, twist. The that's the nature of it, is twist after twist, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I think, Handmaiden had some great twists as well, which were fascinating. That's a
So
beautiful movie. But this was beautiful. And good representation from Korea this year for Project Wolf Hunting. How different than the bloodiest movie, and then two thrillers.
so
That's great.
we should do some quick takes on
Sure.
a few. What else would you tell us about? And then I want to just talk about recapping your thoughts on the whole experience.
So
But what else would you hit on?
quick, there's a movie called Hazard, and the conceit, it's a fast paced, like, literally. The conceit is everything takes place in the car, like all the cameras are in the car
Uh huh.
constantly, even starting with putting gas in, but it's from the gas cap with the outward view, which evidently was a hard to shoot, because that's a tiny area to put a camera. But there
This is a Dutch movie,
it's a Dutch movie.
brand new. Yep.
Yeah. And I have a person who's a wheelman. All he calls himself, he's a driver. And he gets, what's hopefully his last gig. He's thinking about maybe going legit, and his girlfriend, he's a nice guy. He's like taking his girlfriend and her daughter to school, and he has, this expensive Lexus, which evidently, according to the director, Lexus was one of the only car place companies that would let them kind of rip a car apart. Which, by the way, if you've never had to license cars or any kind of vehicle, and this happens in video games as well, depending on what you want to do, if you want to show them damaged at all, some people are okay with it, some people are not.
Hmm.
And so evidently Lexus was cool about it.
Huh.
So you see a car, and he's super great driver, and he picks up his cousin Carlos, and Carlos convinced him, like, come on, one last, you got to help me out. I'm just out of prison. Of course, everybody else is going, "Yeah, there's a reason he was in prison. Like, what what are you doing?" Right? And but the whole conceit is, the whole thing is done from the car, from various. I mean, it's not just one camera pointing out, but it's the camera never leaves the car until there's a switch. Of course, there's got to be switches here and there, but
Yeah.
that's the whole conceit. It's pretty great. And again, seeing a Dutch car movie after, we have our own Fast and the Furious, and this is, fast cars, lots of crime.
Cool.
Also, smoking causes coughing, which is a great, if you liked Rubber and Deerskin and Quentin Dupieux's, like, Over, this is kind of in that. There's a lot of, I like absurdity.
Hmm.
I'm up and down on some of his films, but this one is basically a superhero team, and they're kind of like a Sentai, like, Power Rangers team called Tobacco Force. With names, they have like it's like a what, ammonia, nicotine, methanol.
And these are masked heroes,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I,
Extremely popular masked heroes.
yes.
and
Yeah.
they give cancer to their enemies. But they don't smoke. That's
How strange.
but
And this is a French it's a French comedy. I
yeah.
actually cannot wait to see that. That sounds
It
hilarious.
so
Yeah.
so I think you'll like this because we both tend to like these kind of take a thing and then put it in a normal circumstance. So
Yes.
they're told like you've been working too hard and you're not really gelling as a group. So go to a retreat
Yeah.
for superheroes.
Yeah.
And so it's like what happens? But also while they're at the retreat, of course, the world might be destroyed.
Mhm.
So, how do you contact these people who are on it? Told the forced retreat, and evidently they're the only people who can, solve this because they're the biggest superhero team.
That sounds really great. I have to see a
And
trailer
it
for this.
becomes kind of like most of it. So there's a meta, like stories within stories.
Mhm.
So it's in parts kind of almost an anthology, but it's just so I am a huge fan of absurdity, and so this really I get this. His films aren't for everybody. If you're looking for like a strong narrative, and I don't mean to say this, I hope this comes across. Like if your movie needs a point, like if you go, I don't know what I just saw, you could also come out of it, and I've seen people go, what was the point of that? Like,
Yeah.
where's the through line? And
Yeah.
there is one, but it's not traditional, So it's a lot of it sort of meanders, but it meanders in a way that I am down for.
Mhm.
I also that meandering, I don't want to use that as that's not a bad thing. It just goes, you're just kind of along, it just pulls you along for the ride.
Mhm.
Right? It's like you're on a rail, like you're on a Disney ride or Universal ride through, and the whole track is absurdity.
I probably will really enjoy that stuff. I mean,
I
for
think you
me,
will.
especially since I don't take things, I take serious things seriously, but there is a class of people who watch. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. There's a class of people who watch films and they're just always annoyed at, humor, basically, which is why so many dudes have been unhappy with She-Hulk because they're like, I don't understand what this is for. It seems to be just
Oh,
funny. And I'm
I
like,
I love that show.
I love that show, but you have to have the attitude in your mind, "Oh, this is for enjoying."
That's sure to anger some people. I enjoy things.
Right?
I'm not. I guess. So if anybody heard that and got offended, they'd be like, "Well, I'm not enjoying you right
We will
now," and
hear
they
we
turn the.
will hear from them, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I don't enjoy: Castle of Horror podcast. You jerks. Click. At this point, I'm going, well, you can hit the X button, but instead
Right.
they'll listen to the rest of it and then write
I
about it,
listened
which
to
I
24 hours of your show, and I have some thoughts.
like.
Like, okay.
What? How do you have time to hate? I don't know. I don't. That's another thing I don't understand. Now, I
Yeah,
tend to not walk out of Fantastic Fest movies, even though there's a couple I feel like I should have for my
yeah,
own enjoyment, but because I want to engage with the artist who's
yeah,
creating these things. So I try to give that as a creative. I try to respect that as well, even though there's a couple I probably just should have done that and taken care of myself, and that's okay. Not this
yeah,
time though. I had a blast. Like every movie I saw had something I dug,
yeah,
and that's amazing. I mean that's pretty good odds. 30 something films and everyone you dug
yeah,
something.
yeah,
That's this is a year that happened. It's usually a little bit more. The amplitude frequency is a little higher, like the highs and
yeah.
lows. But yeah, I don't get when people are like I sat through 10 episodes of this and I hate, and here's why it's crappy. Like I wow. I mean,
That's
I don't
that's
understand. The
dedication to
X
your
button is always there for you.
Oh my
I
goodness.
recommend I recommend something you enjoy. But hey, I guess that's that person's. Who am I to be the arbiter of what that person does or
It is,
doesn't enjoy?
Tony, it's something honestly, it's something akin to a fetish. There are people who really enjoy the visceral sensation of being unhappy, and it's,
That's a bummer.
I
I
know
hate
me.
being unhappy, and my brain constantly tells me to be unhappy. So I don't even know what that's like to go. I'm going to purposely do this.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, man. To me, that's a missed opportunity. I deal with enough stuff that makes me unhappy. I don't.
Everybody has their probably opportunities for improvement that might be aided by therapy. That's all I
But
that's
yeah,
that's all
yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. I
Okay,
always. But anyway,
you got 2 more though. You said
yeah,
Solomon
yeah.
King and Bad
Solomon
City.
King, restoration. of a movie that was found, and at first just the opposite of New York Ninja, which I talked about.
Hmm.
From Vinegar Syndrome, the sound elements were found.
Hmm.
And
Solomon King came out in 1974.
yeah, well, it was thought of as a lost film.
Mm.
Saul Watts, who's in the movie, had a string of successful businesses, and kind of in a Rudy Ray Moore kind of style, decided I'm going to make this movie,
Yeah.
and got the soundtrack together, everything. And so his wife, I think, if I'm not mistaken, found they found the sound element, and then eventually found the film and put them together.
Wow.
They did like a video that was like, post Kickstarter style, or I can't remember if it's Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but they put it together, and it's a blast. And it's so cool to see these films coming out, and then also thinking about, here's a guy, maybe it's not a great film, right?
Hmm.
But boy, is it enjoyable. And seeing somebody who's successful, like this guy didn't have to, he was a successful businessman, multiple business, restaurants, clothing, and all the clothing, came from his clothing stores, right? All
Yeah.
these awesome 70s suits.
And that's really neat.
And here's a person who decided, you know what, I want to make a film, and he got everything together, and he had the soundtrack produced and everything.
Did the film come out?
I can't. I think it did, but I think it got lost. Like it was.
Yeah, I mean, no, I know it's been considered lost since the 70s, but I mean, did it
I
ever
mean, if it
ever
did, it was,
screen?
not a wide release.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Was anybody
You
connected to the film present in the screenings?
no, not at our screening. They did a Q&A with his wife,
Okay,
and
well,
that
that's
was pretty
fantastic. She's the
cool.
one who
And she
stored the
was,
sound elements, so that's
yeah,
really
and
great.
she was talking about, his passion, and I think they had separated and came back, and then he was always just a really great. There's a Maserati in the film that's her Maserati, but he thought it looked cool. It does look cool, by the way.
Hmm.
70s Maserati that looks cool.
I
So
bet
our,
it
our
does.
Solomon King has a cool ride, like
Yeah,
for
that
real.
is really cool.
But
That sounds good. I can't wait to
it
watch that.
deals with like it's funny. Like there's oil interests in the Middle East, and an amazingly not Middle Eastern prince. The casting is this guy, tan- tangentially Middle Eastern stuff in it. Is has a coup, and Solomon King, the princess of this country, through various means, eventually ends up hanging out, living or staying with Solomon King. It's up to him to protect her, as this coup has happened in her country.
Yeah,
And find out what to do. And of course, they're all after Solomon King because he's trying to protect her.
sure.
But yeah, it's like everything I want from an exploitation film like this.
Oh yeah,
He was making, like,
that's
cool tunes,
interesting that he's
disco
got that.
grooves, awesome suits. It's
Well, I mean, I'm
definitely
all
a
for independently
independent
financed
film.
movies. I mean, that's fantastic. So yes,
It's not up there with Three the Hard Way, right?
right.
Like that is one of my all-time faves. Or various other ones. But to have somebody who's like, what, it's not cheap to make a film.
No.
But he's such an entrepreneur because, again, he can wardrobe out of his stores. He can,
Yeah.
possibly cater from his restaurants. I don't know if that actually happened. They didn't talk about that, but one
Yeah.
can imagine that would be easy to do the catering for your film from one of your restaurants, right?
Yeah.
He's using a Maserati that he gifted his wife, who she said he was just always, whatever you need, I'm going to give it to you. And this is a guy also, who got up at 5 a.m. He's running his businesses while he's filming this movie, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, I slept after Fantastic Fest. I slept in and played some video games. I didn't make a film.
Right. Right.
So, wow, Saul Watts, you were amazing. It was great to his wife. That kind of thing. She kind of hinted that, like any marriage, there were ups and downs, but she had nothing to,
Yeah.
but good things to say. He was just a good guy who decided he wanted to make a film. And then finally, I also saw Bad City, which is a Japanese Yakuza crime. There's a group they form a special detective team to deal with some Yakuza matters. And it's almost literally, if anybody's played the video games, the Yakuza video game, it's almost literally some of the stuff I've seen in there. Not to say that the directors ripped that off, but just that it's so ingrained in how big gangs operate and what their political influences are and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
that they're of course going to overlap when you tell a crime drama
Sure.
in this. And it's Bad City it was everything I wanted in that. I really enjoyed it, but also, like I said, because I played a lot of the games, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, that's kind of like, I guess this is I think there is a movie adaptation of the games, but
Huh.
this felt like a side adaptation of several different storylines from the games, which and I enjoy them because like I was playing 7, at one point you have, Korean gangs and Japanese mafia, and you're guy who's an outcast from that, and you went to prison. And then also at one point you fight a giant Roomba,
Mm.
and you can have a chicken that in one of them that runs your businesses. Like I love those games because it's hard hitting drama, and then also a chicken can run your or you're defending an ersatz Michael Jackson from a Thriller video. uh uh, you know that's the kind of thing in the games. This Bad City doesn't go that far. It's not a farce. It's not absurdity, but it is a really solid crime drama.
Huh.
Doesn't shirk from violence, of course, which is part and parcel for this kind of stuff. It's not as good as perhaps some of the Beat Takeshi stuff like Outrage.
Mhm.
Those are hard to go up against, right? But if you're looking for a solid, crime drama, Japanese crime drama, it was really cool. I'm glad I was able to catch it. We have a detective who's pulled out of prison to head this department, and all of that kind of stuff, and dealing with it's a separate they form a separate team because they don't want to reveal that what they're working on. So there's a lot of interplay between the different departments of the police department, as well as how that all works. Because part of the whole deal with the mafia there is it's kind of some things get swept under the rug unless they escalate. Everybody just kind of deals with it in a way,
Yeah.
and that has been the source of a lot of great movies and media because of that interplay. So yeah, Bad City. I'm looking forward to that coming out as well because I can watch a ton of Japanese crime thrillers. Like, oh look, a new one popped up here. Here we go.
Yeah.
Again, there's another one of my late night like, oh, this is out. Let's see what's up with this. In fact, just recently I rewatched the Outrage movies because Beat Takeshi is pretty amazing in them. But yeah, in general, I mean, that was my, I'm still, like you said, I'm still coming down from Fantastic Fest. And also, I have to give a shout out. Every person, there's a whole slew of volunteers who are there
Mm.
before and after every screening. Like after I went home and I thought I was tired, right? There are people cleaning up the theaters and, making it in the next day to do the same, and serve food, and the projectionists who, have to tech all the films, multiple formats, even, right? So you have
Yeah.
an Agva thing on 35 millimeter. You've got various DCPs. You got DCPs sent from you who are maybe even unfinished for some of the effects or cuts, and the projectionists have to get all of that tech it. There's often a Q&A in happening in one theater and simulcast into another theater, so you're watching what's in the other theater and syncing all that up. Like that is no mean feat,
Yeah.
And then there's Fonz PR, who does all the PR and sending out, getting me in touch with people to interview or to watch the P&I screenings, and
Mhm.
they do a really fantastic job. I've known them for a long time, and Fonz PR has grown into this entity that is tied. They do other stuff, but they're tied in deeply with the Fantastic Fest, and has helped. I mean, we've talked to people because we got interviews through them and stuff. So all of the staff, all of the people who are at the draft house, and you and I have been going, like we said before, since what, 97, 98.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
to see that growth
yeah.
happen is just wow, unbelievable.
It's hard to believe that there was a point when there was no Alamo Drafthouse.
Yeah,
Because when Tarantino Fest came back in '96, there was no Alamo Drafthouse, but only barely. And then suddenly there was. Boom. It was
yeah.
like, so that by the next Tarantino Fest, there was a Drafthouse there. So that tells me it was like
And
'97.
it's there's lots of ups and downs. I mean, now it's definitely more corporate, and that has its pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
Um, but it was cool to be back again with the odds of seeing 34, 35 movies and having them all be something that had things that were enjoyable.
Yeah.
That says a lot. Now, I do take it like there were some people who said they missed some of the really, really highs, but that
Hmm.
meant also there were more lows. So and I think as you're rebuilding, coming back from pandemic, I think a smooth fest is perhaps what everyone needed for a win,
Mhm.
and I really, I look forward to covering more of these movies, and then some that I may have missed over the year, because there's still, there's tons of movies there, and there are a few that I need to go back and watch, etc. That, I look forward to those coming out, and possibly even having some that finally get distribution from last year,
Yeah.
where I can finally go, I've been telling everybody about this movie for 2 years. Now it's here.
Yeah.
And occasionally they just never come out in a way that we can watch them. I had to really
Mm.
search for a few. I don't think I've decided to start digging. There was a Japanese movie called Golden Slumber that I still don't have. I have Fish Story, which
Mhm.
is amazing. It's such a good film. Third Window put out a great release of Fish Story, but Boy and a Samurai also very hard to find. And Golden Slumber, I'm still kind of looking around for a good subtitled copy of that. I hope Third Window. I wish Third Window could pick that one up. But I look forward to having more recommendations. I'll probably have some more tomorrow, hopefully, and then just now I'm waiting. It's kind of like the countdown everybody has for Halloween. Like of course I'm
Mhm.
counting that down as well. But now that I'm slightly recovered, I'm also going, oh man, it's a year from now till I get Fantastic Fest.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something for me. It's something I like when I talk to my employers. I go, I'm gonna be out. Like I need PTO. I'll save it up my
Yes.
PTO and I'm giving you a year's notice. Like it's gonna be in September. I'll get you the dates as soon as possible. And I guess that's how ingrained, and my love of cinema is so ingrained that I am willing to put something on the books a year ahead, but also have that be part of, like, if I get hired somewhere, I
Mhm.
go, is it gonna be a problem in our schedule that I'm out for at least, like, a week at the close to the end of September? Are we gonna have an issue here? Which is crazy. I mean, of course, if I need the job, I wouldn't do that. But that's how my mind thinks. That's how my creativity works. That's what I use to springboard my
Yeah.
creative brain, and it's integral to that. In fact, when I went to Japan, I was telling Tim Lee that I was in Japan. It was amazing. And
Mhm.
it happened to be that a year where Fantastic Fest overlapped that vacation time. And I told him, I wrote him, was like, just so you know, I'm in Japan, but I'm still like, oh man, I kind of wish I could have seen this one screening that was at Fantastic Fest,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Like, I'm in Japan with Rain. I mean, it wasn't like a big regret, but the fact that didn't totally, that I was still like, oh man, that screening would have been cool to go to, probably says a lot about me more than anything. But just how important this presentation and this festival is to me personally. And I
Mm.
hope that people listening to this are along for the ride and trust my recommendations and aren't just like, dude, we get it. Fantastic Fest. Good Lord.
No, but I don't think so. I mean, I think it's first of all because of the legitimacy of the fest and the Alamo. I don't think anybody would doubt what you're saying for a second. I'm always amazed at the mix they have of new stuff coming out and just repertory stuff. Like the
Yeah.
Solomon King concept, that's brilliant. Playing this lost film, that's a wonderful place
Well,
for it to show up. Yeah.
again, there was a in addition to all of this, with all of the Spanish language film taking thing, they still had a whole, you could watch, I want to say, like, at least
Mm.
4 or 5 shark movies. Like there was a whole shark theme that happened.
Right.
Like
And
in amongst
you spoke
everything
about
else.
one of them, which was Year of the
Yeah.
Shark, which is a
But
French movie.
there was a shark movie from India. There's shark, like you could go into a shark themed. You could have your own Shark Week while watching all of everything else,
That's
which is
awesome.
crazy. And then you could also do a full day of America Genre Film Archive (AGFA). If
Mhm.
you wanted to just, I am going to spend a day watching repertory screening,
Yeah.
you could make that choice. I didn't. I saw The Hidden, which was such a good movie. I love that movie. And a great Q&A from the director. Also early, I'd forgotten Danny Trejo has a line in The Hidden.
I haven't thought
Um,
about The Hidden in years. I remember the
oh
movie,
man,
but
revisit.
yeah.
I want a 4K of that.
Yeah.
I would love a UHD version of The Hidden. But yeah, director came and he talked about making the film and about the ending, which I don't want to spoil the ending, but he clarified. Somebody asked, like, hey, is it this or this?
Uh-huh.
And he actually didn't leave it. He's like, I think it's this, and here's why.
Huh.
And that was that kind of stuff. That's the stuff you get at a fest like this. And he also, he did tons of great horror. So
I find it interesting, by the way. I was just looking it up. There is the Hidden Two. It is unconnected to the original, and it'd be
ooh,
fun
I
to
don't know
watch
about
those
that.
together. Because, well, no, it's it's connected, but my point is, it's not the same creative people. So it's directed by Seth Pinkster, who I don't know, but that doesn't mean anything, right? So who knows? It was a New Line direct-to-video 1993 sequel. So that's what, 6 years after the original, they did a direct-to-video sequel. I think it might be fun to watch those back to back and just get a feel for. Um, uh, who knows? That could be great. It could be disappointing. We'll find out.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
mean, Jack Shoulder also did, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and Alone in
mhm.
the Dark and all these great movies in addition to The Hidden. And he's super cool. Shook hands with him last night as he was leaving. Yeah. Just talk briefly about film. How often does that happen, right?
Yeah,
And again, in a way that's just like, hey, let's talk about film. We're in this era, that's
yeah,
what we're here. Where this is the space to do that. But that was super cool. I'm ready. I'm ready for the coming year. I'm ready to
yeah.
create this album, to write more lyrics. There's little bits that stick in my brain, that I think about as I'm going through this.
I envy
And
you.
I'm hoping that more people, that this helps. Like, people are looking for similar things, and I really also hope that anybody who's listening to this, we talk about these films and promote, give my reviews of what to look for. That there's also questions, in the Facebook chat
Mhm.
or on Twitter, and that you're able to find
Yes.
something that really goes, ooh, I need to see that, because I think there's a lot of worthy cinema. I was talking to a friend of mine as well about people who go, well, there's nothing good coming out.
Mhm.
And like that, you know, same happens with music. Like, there aren't any good bands anymore, and it's all the same, blah blah. Like, you aren't digging, because I
You're
listen to
right,
new
exactly.
stuff. It's okay, but you don't gripe about it, because it's not, in my
The
opinion,
only
it's hard to,
instance,
like, it's not true. That
right.
you may not be finding the things you want, but I think that just means you need to dig more. And it's okay if you don't want to dig.
Well, but if you
But
don't wanna dig, you don't then there's no reason to complain. In
I
other words,
guess so.
if you're like, "I'm listening," if what you're saying is, Jason, I'm listening 12 hours a day to nothing that came out after 1970," that's on you, or that's on me, but there's nothing to complain about. That's the world I chose, right? But it's
Yeah.
not doesn't have to be that way. You can listen to new music, and you
It
can
does
listen.
take digging, and it often takes, I don't think putting on you I have found that putting on a Spotify list tangentially doesn't always show me what
Mm,
I might want to find.
right.
I tend to do more digging through recommendations from PR places, and who deal with, some podcasts, but mostly like what those podcasts post.
Mhm.
Okay, the new release from such and such band, or this sounds like this. And then, also I'm part of a bunch of, like, for example, like Stoner Rock. But because of my band, I'm in a bunch of those a bunch of those places. And for movies, it's festivals, and then, recommendations from people that we've been to this fest, for example, for enough times, and now we're friends, and they go, hey, I think you'll dig this. Or I think, or if they're going out there and going, these things are the things I really enjoy. I have a bunch of film critic friends, and once I found the ones that I aligned with, I'm not saying that I don't go outside of that box,
Mhm.
or that, and sometimes we'll disagree on things, right? But I know what they like, and what films we connect with, and what things we differ on. So sometimes they go, this is not my bag because of this. And in my head, I go, well, we've disagreed on these points before. That sounds like something I want to check out, right? Like, you can also, take the negative, quote unquote, and go, oh. And that's not to say, like, anything you like, anything you hate, I'll like, because I've known some people who take that, like, I see this critic and they hate it, I know I'll like it. I don't necessarily find that to be true, but you find those avenues, and I'm hoping that these recommendations for this will, get more people into looking at,
Yeah.
some more films, some, even like we talked about, outsider cinema, or little bits that, that wasn't on my radar, but now, let me check that out. If you're inquisitive, there's an almost infinite amount of things you can watch, or you can put into your brain currently, or your ears, or
Absolutely.
whatever. And so that's where I'm at. But I
Well,
think I'm gonna
Tony.
watch Shin Ultraman again.
Oh, for sure.
It's one of my other things.
Well,
Like, there's a few I
and
probably rewatch on Fantastic Fest at Home if I have time. Like,
yeah.
that's the hard part, though, is there are, like, about half a dozen movies that I wanna catch that I wasn't able to catch at the fest, and so it's like, do I watch those, or do I, like, get some more popcorn made at home and watch Shin Ultraman again? That's a possibility, so we'll see.
Well, and we're going to talk again tomorrow night
Yeah, Scars of
because
Dracula.
Scars
Yes.
of Dracula. We're going to dig back into Hammer horror. So it's so yeah, you're going to get back into sort of your normal process.
I
Um,
like that normal does a lot of heavy lifting.
yes.
Normal as a concept does a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
Yes, but I'm excited. I cannot believe that we've been doing the show for something like 10 years or so, and we've somehow never done Scars of Dracula, a Hammer Dracula film starring Christopher Lee, and we've never talked about it. That's sort of
I don't
amazing.
know. I never know how those happen because I could have sworn we've done all of it, but
There's still gaping crevasses that we can traverse. So
blood-filled valleys,
yes, all right.
landscapes of dystopia that we
I
still
am
need to
going
uncover.
to I'm going to get out into the sun. I hope you get a chance to do the same.
We'll see. I talked about all this like, oh, I'm gonna watch this and that. Well, I think tomorrow I do. I am. At least tomorrow I will get out actually into the sun.
Yeah,
Luckily, there's the between times at the fest where we're all hanging out outside.
yeah,
But yes, I do plan to actually shake my fist at the fireball in the sky,
yes,
and my vampiric ways will change tomorrow actually. But yeah, that's cool, and thanks to everyone who's been along for the ride for these reviews,
yes,
and hopefully you'll check out something cool, and thanks to all the staff of the Draft House and the directors and filmmakers, all of the filmmakers every step of the way, who made just such amazing things that we can, it's an embarrassment of riches, to be honest, with so much great stuff and so many talented awesome people.
yeah. All right. Have a wonderful day, and
You too.
I will talk to you. I'll talk to you several times this weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Hang in there.
awesome. Take
Bye.
care.
Yes, sir.